as we venture into the murky waters of everything you've been told never to bring up at holiday dinner. You'll need a guide, someone you can trust, a battle-tested, common-sense leader who knows that an extra pair of dry socks just might save your life. That wise old sage has arrived, and he is shouting the Schmidt Show battle cry. Schmidt heads unite!
Good morning, good afternoon. Time-appropriate greetings depending on where in the country you are. It is going to be an interesting day today. Oh, we got music still going here. Sorry about that. There we go. I had to hack and cough and clear my throat. You'd think I'd be ready for this. I do this podcast every Monday, and you think I would be ready before I actually turn on the microphone. So apologize for that. Anyway, good morning, good afternoon, time appropriate greetings depending on where in the country you are as we jump into the Schmidt Show today. I am, in fact, your host, Brad Schmidt. Thanks for joining me. We're going to talk a little bit. I've titled this week's episode in somewhat of a tongue-in-cheek silliness. I've titled it Transnazistic Intersectional Diversity Free Speech Training. That's what's going on today. So if that doesn't make any sense to you, don't worry about it. It doesn't make any sense to anybody. It's not supposed to. It's just a way of me to be somewhat of a bit of a goof this week. So maybe it'll create some interest in some folks who have never listened to the Schmidt Show podcast. Will be enticed to download it as well, which you can do, of course, all of the, Stitcher, Castbox, iTunes, Google Play, all of that. We're pretty much everywhere, thanks to the Hig, who unfortunately is not here again this week. He was in Boston last week. He was at, where was he? He was in Boston at the Red Hat something or another, this conference from Red Hat. He was out there. So this week he's actually filling in for the company that I work for. For my terrestrial radio show. The Hig is over there filling in on one of their stations in St. Cloud, Minnesota. So he is actually not in St. Cloud, but he's filling in through our station at a station we own in St. Cloud. So if you want to tune in to listen to him, I think it's knsiradio.com. You could do that if you're ever interested in listening in when he's filling in. I'm also on, as I mentioned, a terrestrial radio show. It's at knoxradio.com, knoxradio.com. I'm on every day from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. I shouldn't say every day. Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. You can tune in at knoxradio.com and then just click on the Listen Live button. So you can get a hold of us there and be a part of that show as well. This is actually kind of a separate entity. It is not technically connected to Leighton Broadcasting and KNOX Radio, except that I'm also a host over there. This is kind of a separate venture, but I enjoy and am proud of the radio show that we put together over there. So I like to invite people to be a part of that and join that experience as well. So anyway, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about transnazistic intersectional diversity free speech training today. So we're gonna start with a couple of discussions that I've found in the Telegram group. If you're a member of the Telegram group for the Schmidt Show, which is just the Schmidt Show on Telegram, we have some discussion over there. There's about 60 of us that kind of hang out in there. Not everybody comments and discusses, but there is some good discussion in that Telegram group. So if you are interested in being a part of that, you can join the conversation there. There's been some good conversation recently, just in the last couple of days and earlier this morning. There's a listener to the podcast. I'm not sure how to pronounce his Telegram handle. It's Kieron or Kyron's Keiron. And he said essentially that, hey, I'm the lefty of the group. And as all of you who listen to the Schmidt Show, you know that I certainly lean right. But he says, I'm kind of the lefty of the group, and I'm paraphrasing. But as he says, and as I've pointed out several times, echo chambers are dangerous. So I'm glad that he's there as somewhat, in his words, as an alternative voice. So thanks for being a part of that, and you can join the conversation in Telegram there if you're a Telegram user. So like I say, all kinds of ways to interact with the show. We've got in the new studio, we haven't gotten the phones up and running yet, so as soon as we get that back up, we'll be getting involved in that discussion. But today we're going to talk about some of the discussions that took place in the Telegram group, starting with going back a couple of days. And I had actually planned on talking about this before it was mentioned in the Telegram group, but there was a story about an 8th grade girl, about an 8th place girl, 8th place finisher in the girls' track and track meet. I can't remember where this is from. Let me get up the link here. The link is from where's she from? I think it was in Massachusetts. Is where she was competing, or maybe it was Virginia. But anyway, she was competing in some various meets. She was Bloomfield High School, wherever that's at, Connecticut. I knew it was up there somewhere, Connecticut. Bloomfield High School. There were two transgender athletes, transgender boys who identified as females. That were competing as females in the Bloomfield High School and the Connecticut State Indoor track competitions. These two boys went on, one to set a record of 6.95 seconds in the 55-meter dash, and went on to win New England titles in both the 55-meter dash and the 300-meter dash. This, to some, was a triumph, as the article points it out to be. And to others, to Selena Sewell, or Suley, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. I didn't watch the video. There's a video that accompanies it, but I read the article. This Selena girl from Glastonbury, to her, it was personal because she missed out on qualifying for the 55-meter dash in the New England regionals by 2 positions. She finished 8th place. Had the two boys not been competing in the girls' sports, saying they identify as females, she would have placed 6th, which would have qualified her to run the 55-meter dash in front of college coaches at the New England regionals. Instead, she finished 8th and is now watching from the spectators section and qualified only in the long jump, an event in which the transgender athletes did not compete. So there is some discussion. There's another article that's been bouncing around over the weekend. There was a transgender athlete in weightlifting competitions that set some world records in the women's weightlifting categories. And the Raw Powerlifting Federation, I'm assuming RAW stands for something. I'm not a powerlifter. If you've ever seen me, you know that I am definitely not a powerlifter. And so I'm assuming Raw stands for something, but the Raw Powerlifting Federation has recently made a statement, said that they are stripping this transgender weightlifter of her records. They're rejecting the claims that she has broken several of the women's weightlifting records because the reality is she's not a female. She's not a woman. So his statement says this: our rules and the basis of separating genders for competition are based on physiological classification rather than identification. On the basis of all the information presented to the board of directors for this particular case, the conclusion made is that the correct physiological classification is male. Since the lifter's gender classification for the purpose of our rules is not consistent with female, no female records will be broken by these lifts. So there is more and more backlash that is being presented, or that is coming up as it relates to transgender athletes, specifically male transgender athletes, or transgender athletes who are biologically male and identify as female. They're seeing a little more pushback from folks, and quite honestly, it's about time that someone stands up and says, hey, this is not acceptable. I have a 23-year-old daughter who has competed in a couple of different sports throughout her lifetime. Not a lot. She wasn't a really, extremely athletic person, but when she was in middle school and early high school, she did try volleyball and did okay. She made the team a year or two, I think, and she was not an extremely athletic individual, but she did okay, and she enjoyed it for the time that she did it. And as she realized that it wasn't quite as fun as it maybe used to be or whatever, she moved on and found other things to do, got more involved with music and some other things. So that's somewhat irrelevant to the story, but the point being that if she had ever had to compete with males who are, more physically fit, or who are just physiologically more built for various athletic prowess, or have higher athletic prowess in various sports, that would have been unfair. That would have been it would have been wildly frustrating to me in the first place that she would have to compete for a spot against a male athlete who, through no real training or improved conditioning or anything like that, would have performed better in certain sports, whether they're being taller and being able to jump higher for in the realm of volleyball, or run faster, or whatever in track, or whatever the case may be, hit the golf ball harder in golf. It would have been incredibly unfair for her to have to compete for a spot on a team or at a competition against someone who has an unfair advantage. And there is no question that male athletes have unfair advantage over female athletes. Like that's not a social construct, right? There is decades and decades of evidence. You can go to Wikipedia and look up the world records for various track and field events, and you will see that the fastest women in the world don't even come close to competing with the fastest men in the world. There's just, again, it's not because of social construct or anything like that. It's simply a physiological difference. Men have different muscle structure. Men have different skeletal structure that allows them to compete at a much higher level in various ways. So, for example, Usain Bolt is the 100-meter dash world record holder. He set the world record in Berlin, when was that? In 2009, with the 100-meter dash at 9.58 seconds. That's side note. I read somewhere that there are actually doctors and physical I don't know what you would call them, scientists that study the physical capabilities of human beings. So whatever the name of their particular study is, Usain Bolt, it is believed, may have run the fastest possible time as a human being. Like he was at the very limits of human ability like physics. And again, who knows? Somebody may break that someday, but there's been some discussion that it may be physically impossible to break Usain Bolt's record of 9.58 seconds for the 100-meter dash. Now, if you scroll down the list to the women's 100-meter dash, it is held currently by Florence Griffith Joyner, set in 1988 in the excuse me, I had to sneeze, in the U.S. Olympic trials in Indianapolis. She set a time of 10.49 seconds. The fastest woman in the world, which that record has not been broken in 31 years. And it's still an entire second slower than the fastest man in the world. And the list goes on and on. The 200-meter dash, of course, Usain Bolt owns that one as well, 19.19 seconds. The female 200-meter dash, 21.34 seconds. More than 2 seconds slower. And the gap gets wider and wider and wider the farther we go down the list. The 400-meter dash, set by Wade van Niekerk, in 2016. I believe he is from Russia. Nope, he is Republic of South Africa is where he's from. Set the world record at 43.03 seconds. The women's 400-meter dash, set by Marita Cook in 1985, more than 30 years ago. 34 years ago almost now. 47.6 seconds. So physiologically, almost 4 seconds slower than the world's fastest man. So the idea that it is acceptable for male athletes who identify as females to compete alongside of women for the same prize is, one, wildly unfair, and two, it is such that it takes away from the opportunities and the advancement of young women. Now, as a father of a daughter and a husband of a wife, I do not believe that it is fair for my daughter to have to compete alongside anyone, male or female, who has an unfair advantage over them for anything. Now, there are moments people say, well, what about people like Ronda Rousey? Ronda Rousey could kick your butt. Yeah, Ronda Rousey could kick my butt. Ronda Rousey could embarrass me, and I'm not a fighter. She could beat me to a bloody pulp. There's no question about that. But you put Ronda Rousey in the ring with Conor McGregor, and Ronda Rousey doesn't stand a chance. And that's nothing against Ronda Rousey. That's not to suggest that Ronda Rousey is an incapable fighter, or she's not a good enough woman, or she's somehow inferior to Conor McGregor because of her gender. But the reality is, physically, Conor McGregor would be able to dominate her in any competition as it relates to their area of expertise. And again, it's nothing against Ronda Rousey. And I believe if you asked Ronda Rousey, she'd probably tell you the same thing. So this idea that it is acceptable for females to have to compete against males in the realm of athletics is just unbelievable. It is so far outside the realm of reality that I can't even begin to lay out how unfair that is to young women. We talk all the time, the feminists all the time, talking about women being held down by the patriarchy, women being forced into subservient roles here and there and wherever. And what we're ending up with is females because we're afraid to offend anyone. We're seeing females damaged more. The transgender argument will do more damage to young women over the next decade in opportunity and advancement in various ways than any other myth of the gender pay gap and all of the other things that they seem to speak out about. But nobody wants to talk about how this transgender movement is destroying the lives of young women. Now, this young girl, this Selena, she seems like she's a pretty sharp kid with a good head on her shoulders. So my belief is that she's probably going to succeed anyway. But let's just put in perspective here for just a moment. Let's just say that Selena Sewell, a 16-year-old from Glastonbury, Connecticut, she didn't get an opportunity to run and show off her skills in front of college coaches. Now let's just take these two transgender boys out of the equation. Let's put her up in sixth place, just for the sake of argument. Let's put her up in sixth place. She finds out that she is going to be competing in the New England regional sport, or New England regional 55-meter dash. So she starts training, working a little bit harder, starts doing a little bit of research, learns a little bit better stride, finds a way to pick up an extra tenth of a second here or there. And you know, maybe she finds a new running suit that gives her a little bit less drag. I don't know anything about track and field. But whatever it is that she does, she improves her time from a sixth place finishing time to a second place, or even maybe a first place. Or it's a particularly good day for her that day. She's feeling good. Whatever it is, she comes out of the blocks and she nails the 55-meter dash. And she competes in the 55-meter dash in front of college coaches. And she sets, maybe not a record, but she sets a blazing speed that catches the eye of the University of Connecticut track and field coach. And he thinks, hey, this girl's pretty good. I see that she finished sixth in her local meet, but she also improved her time and just won the regional meet. I think I can work with her. I think I can train her. I think I can get her to where she can compete at an NCAA level. And she goes off to UConn, and she gets a scholarship, full ride scholarship, to run track for the University of Connecticut. Then she goes on, gets her degree in whatever, chemical engineering, accounting, nursing. She becomes a nurse anesthetist, whatever she becomes. She graduates with a degree that will earn her over the course of her lifetime a couple $1 million more than had she had to go to a trade school and become a plumber, whatever she wanted to become. Actually, plumbers make pretty good money nowadays, but you get the point. She goes off to, maybe instead of becoming a nurse anesthetist, she takes a position at a nursing home as a CNA, certified nursing assistant, and literally loses out on millions of dollars over the course of her lifetime. Is it fair to her to allow a transgender athlete to compete? It's only a track meet, right? It's only a track meet. It's only a 55-meter dash. But is it? Maybe instead of going to the University of Connecticut, or maybe she still goes on to University of Connecticut, but instead of getting a full ride scholarship in track and field, she has to take out student loans. And with her student loans, she goes $50,000 in debt and has to pay those back at whatever percent interest. Over the course of paying them back, she pays another $30,000 to $40,000 in interest effectively doubling the cost of her education, her degree. And it takes her until she's 30 or 35 or 40 to get out of debt and pay off her student loans and start funding her retirement. And again, misses out on the possibility of hundreds of thousands and maybe millions of dollars in her lifetime, all because of a track meet. So this idea that it doesn't matter, it's high school sports, or it doesn't matter, it's just a track meet, that argument doesn't fly anymore. It's never flown. It's never been a decent argument. But what happens is it gets pushed aside because we're afraid to offend anybody. We're afraid to speak difficult truths and afraid to be honest with people and say, look, the reality is you are given an unfair advantage due to the nature of your biology. And you don't get to compete against young females for positions that they've worked for and deserved simply because of your physiological capabilities. If you care about women, if you care about the plight of young women, then you have to stand up against this. And I get it. There are young transgender males that identify as females, and they want to compete in sports too, and they want to be a part of sports, but they've already started transitioning, and it's embarrassing or whatever. I get all of that. I get that that's not an easy place to be. But the thing is, you don't get to disadvantage everyone else because of the position or the lifestyle choice that you've made. You don't get to disadvantage others because of your selfishness. If you truly believe what you believe about whether it's your transgenderism or whatever, then you get to make sacrifices for your cause. I make sacrifices for my cause. People make sacrifices for their cause all throughout history. But what is not acceptable, at least in my book, is disadvantaging others at sacrificing others for your benefit. You don't get to sacrifice others for your benefit. You can sacrifice yourself and you can sacrifice your own comfort, but you don't get to sacrifice my daughter. You don't get to sacrifice my wife. You don't get to sacrifice my nieces or my cousins. That's on you. And I get that that's a difficult truth, and I know it's maybe not even that easy. There's maybe more to it than that. But that is where we need to take a stand. You don't get to sacrifice others in pursuit of your dream. If you want to compete, then you compete where it is physiologically fair for you to compete. And I've heard the arguments, well, but females or males that are transgender or transitioning into female, they're taking hormones and suppressing their testosterone in order to become a female and whatnot. So they would be disadvantaged because of that by having to compete alongside males. Yeah, they would. But you know what? Nobody's forcing you to take the hormone treatments. Nobody's forcing you to make that transition. If you want to compete, if you want to be at the top level of your sport, then there are sacrifices that you make. My son and I shoot competitive trap. I've mentioned this before. My son works, he's homeschooled, or he does school online. He doesn't go to a public school, does an online private school. So in addition to his school, he works a near full-time job, not quite. Works several hours. He goes out to the trap club every day, almost every day. They're not open every day, but goes out there almost every day. Every day they're open, he's there. And he practices. He shoots 50 to 100 rounds or more every day that he's out there. And he takes his hard-earned money that he works at his part-time high school job, and he buys his own practice cards, and he buys his own ammunition sometimes. He's saved up and bought his own shotgun, his own shooting glasses, and more. My son has literally invested thousands of dollars of his own money in getting better. There's a lot of other things that he would have wanted to do. He would have liked, he's kind of a techie kid. He would have liked to buy more tech, more gear, more laptop computers and whatever else that he wanted. But he didn't, because he sacrificed those things in order to be competitive, in order to shoot at the top levels. And he's literally one of the highest ranked shooters in the entire state. He's won medal after medal and competition after competition. He's hit 200 straight targets in a row without missing, which I know 50, 60, 70-year-olds that have been shooting their entire life have never done it. But he did it because he has sacrificed, and I've sacrificed. I've put thousands of dollars of my own money into helping him. But what we didn't get to do was sacrifice other kids and other parents' money in order to compete. So this idea that either there's two possible solutions. Either A, you sacrifice your self, and I don't mean in some sort of, weird, samurai, fall on your sword kind of sacrifice. But you sacrifice your own comfort, your own desires in order to compete. Or you create a new league. You create a new category for transgender athletes. You have boys, you have girls, you have transgender males transitioning into female, and you have transgender females transitioning into male. You get your own league. You get your own, maybe not a league, but you get your own category. And most likely you won't have anybody to compete with in most places. You might have a few in some of the bigger cities, but like in my state, you wouldn't have anybody to compete against. You'd probably be the only one. So I'm not willing to destroy an entire system because you're not willing to sacrifice for your own dreams and desires. And that's maybe a different approach to the transgender argument, but that's one of them. There's a lot more to be said about it, and I've spoken about it at great length on my terrestrial show, and I'll continue to do that through into the future. But I want to just mention this. I want to wrap up the discussion of transgenderism with this, because I will undoubtedly be called bigoted or hateful or whatever for even having this discussion. Maybe get banned from YouTube or Facebook or whatever for even suggesting that men and women are different and shouldn't be allowed to compete together. So let me say this. The message, if you believe what I believe, I've been fairly open with my faith. I'm a former pastor. I'm a Christian. And I believe that, all of the what's the word I'm looking for? All of the the cliches that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, all of that kind of stuff, right? So if you believe what I believe about the world and believe what I believe about humanity, I want to just kind of say this as it relates to the discussion of transgenderism. The message that the world gives transgenders or says to transgender people or people who are struggling with gender identity issues, the message that they are given or that they are sold as a bill of goods is that they are broken. There is something genetically defective about them. Because we know, purely scientifically, if you just step away from all of the feeling of it, all of the emotion of it, all of the arguments about the social constructs and all of that, if we just step away from all of that for just a second and we break this issue down to its very most most fundamentalist ideology of evolution or biology or whatever, if we break it down to that, we know that transgenderism dies out in a generation. The DNA, the genes, the hereditary traits, all of those sorts of things die out in a generation. At its basis level. And I get it's more complicated than that, and people repressing feelings and emotion, all that kind of stuff. But that's I'm trying to get to a point here. Genetically, if it is something that you are born this way, then the reality is if you are born this way, until we can figure out how to edit adult genes and the adult's DNA to make them not what they are, if you are born this way, then there is something that we know is genetically defective. That's the message. Now, I don't believe that, but that's the message. That's what a transgender person is told. You are genetically defective. You are broken, and there is nothing that you can do about it. You will struggle with this. You will fight with the mental issues of looking in the mirror and seeing something that isn't real. Looking in the mirror and not realizing that what you're seeing does not line up with reality. Whatever the issues and the mental and emotional strain and trauma that comes with gender dysphoria, you're broken and you can't do anything about it. You can never be fixed. And even if we give you this surgery, even if we surgically remove your genitalia or alter your genitalia, you will still always carry the genetic defect that you're not really a woman or you're not really a man. So you will be genetically defective for the rest of your life. And there is no cure. We can make you look different so that you can pretend more effectively that you are not who you are, but you will always, always, always fight with that gender dysphoria. And there's nothing you can ever do about it. That's the message that the world gives the transgender individual. It is hopeless. It is cruel. It is unkind, and it lacks all compassion. You're broken, and there's nothing you can do about it. And not only are you broken, but you are broken in such a unique and strange and rare way that you are less than 1% of the population of the entire world. You are defective and you are weird. And there's nothing you can ever do about it. You will never, ever be able to overcome it. That's the message. Now, again, to be clear, I don't believe that, but that's the message that is given to the transgender community. It's the message that's given to the homosexual, gay, and lesbian community as well. Now, if you believe what I believe, the message is entirely different. If you believe that what I believe about God created us, man and woman, and God is the all-powerful, all-knowing, whatever, right? If you believe that, the message that I have, the message that I believe for the transgender individual is, yes, you're broken, but so am I. We are both broken, and we are in this together. We are both broken, and we are both in need of repair, in need of redemption, in need of using the Christianese terms, salvation. We are both, you and I, broken and need of redemption. And not just you and I, but you and I and them and them and them and them and them and her and him and her and her and him and everybody else. We're all broken. We're all broken, and we're all broken the exact same way. We're all broken in the exact same experience. We are, at our core, sinful human beings. Now, that's the Christianese term. Put it whatever you want. I mean, put whatever term. If you don't like sin, transgressional. I mean, we are all born with a tendency for misbehavior and misadventure. But the good news is that I'm carrying with me is that you can be fixed. You can be redeemed. You can be repaired. You can be rescued from misbehavior and misadventure. There is hope. You do not have to live with this stress and emotional trauma of you are broken and can never do anything about it. So when the message is you're broken and you're that way forever, no matter what, or the message is you're broken, but there is hope and you can be repaired, you tell me which is the message of hate. You tell me which is the message of compassion and kindness. Because the media will tell you, the news will tell you, the television will tell you, the TV shows will tell you, the movies will tell you, all the websites will tell you, all the Facebook postings and the Twitter postings and the social media, the Instagram and all of those, they will tell you that the message that I carry is a message of hate. They will tell you that it is a message of rejection. It is a message of uncertainty or unfairness or fear. Right? We hear phobias, right? Transphobia, homophobia, whatever the phobia is. The reality is I'm not afraid of anyone. I'm not afraid of human beings. The message that I carry with me in my heart, and the message that I know most Christians carry as well, is a message of hope and redemption and rescue. That you do not have to be trapped in who you are if you do not want to be. But the other message that I carry with me, if that's who you want to be, none of my business. Knock yourself out. But I've talked to enough transgender people in my lifetime. I've talked to enough LGBT whatever in my lifetime to know that very few of them, if they are honest with themselves or honest with you or honest with whoever they're talking to, very few of them really, really want to be there. Very few of them have a genuine desire to continue in where they are. But that's one that's not talked about. But it's interesting because the message or the narrative is well, they're born that way. They're born that way. That's just the way they were born. There's nothing they can do about it. It's not. They don't choose that. They were born that way. Yet, many of them say, "Well, I wouldn't choose this if I could, I would choose to be straight. If I could, I would choose to be cisgender, whatever the term for that is. If I could, I would choose to be not what I am." That's the message of the lesbian and gay communities. They were born this way, and I wouldn't choose this if I could. But the message of the transgender community is at odds with that. The message of the transgender community is, well, this is what I choose to be, because gender is just a social construct. There's an inconsistency in the science, the quote unquote science of it. So anyway, we're going to wrap it up a little bit early today. There was more stuff that I wanted to talk to. I'm not going to be able to get to it all. There's some issues of free speech. There's an article. Maybe save this for next week. There was an article in humanevents.com about platform being a civil right, access to things like Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and so on as a right. A civil right. The article makes some good points. I'm not sure if I'm there yet. I'm not sure if I'm quite on that level with this discussion yet. So we'll maybe save that for another episode. There was another discussion about, what was the other one I had here? The free speech. There was some discussion in the Telegram group, and I would encourage you to go check that out. If you're a Telegram user, just look for the Schmidt Show and join that group. But there was some really good discussion in there about Nazism and white supremacy and some of that in response to last week's episode. Or was it last week or the week before? Whichever episode it was that I talked about Nazism and Nazism being a leftist ideology. So there's some interesting discussion that went on there. Again, I'll maybe save that for another day and try to respond to some of that discussion specifically in an episode. So we're going to wrap things up just a little bit early this week. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for spending time with me here on The Schmidt Show. I am your host, Brad Schmidt. As always, if you want to find us, we're at theschmidtshow.com, podcast.theschmidtshow.com. That's the RSS feed is podcast.theschmidtshow.com. We're on Twitter on Twitch and Castbox, and I don't know if we're on Twitch. We used to be on Twitch. I don't think we're on Twitch anymore. But we're on Castbox and Stitcher and iTunes and all of those. We're on. I mean, if there's a podcast, we're on it, or a podcasting platform, we're on it. So, also, I want to say a quick shout out. We've got a couple new Patreon supporters. So that is growing. If you want to join and be a part of the Schmidt Head Brigade, I've got some T-shirts and things made. I'm working on trying to figure out how to get those to our Patreon supporters. I had a custom. I have a friend who signed up as a Patreon supporter. DB, thank you. By the way, DB signed up as a Patreon supporter, and I had a custom pistol case, cloth pistol case, range bag, embroidered with the Schmidt Head logo for him. So I'm working on some of that kind of stuff. I don't want to promise something that I can't follow through on, but just know that I'm working on some of that kind of stuff as a way to reward you, the loyal Schmidt Show listeners, the loyal Schmidt Heads, with that. So don't give up on me. It just, this stuff is expensive. I spent pretty much every penny I've earned from Patreon on getting t-shirts made. And so, there's not a lot of money in this. I don't do it because it's getting me rich. I do it because I love doing it and I love sharing my voice. But all of this stuff, costs a little bit of money. So, we are working on it. So please be patient with us and stick with us. The Schmidt Show continues, next week. It's, the Schmidt Show podcast. So, I just got a text message. How do I become a Patreon supporter? Patreon is, just go to patreon.com and you can sign up at any level. I've got a thing. I think I've got it set up where you can sign up as much as $17.76 a month. But you can sign up as little as $1. You don't have to sign up for much. Whatever you're willing to do, is a thrill for us here at the Schmidt Show. So we will see you next week. The Schmidt Show is out of here.